Hey Wargamers, welcome back to the channel, Death from Above Wargaming. I'm Aaron and we're back again tonight with another classic BattleTech mech review on another classic mech design, the Thunderbolt TDR-5S. This one courtesy of one of our subscribers, Cranky Old Gamer. So thank you for this mech review recommendation. Guys, this mech is just awesome, tough as nails, a wide array of weapons. It's just, again, a staple in the lore. We talked about how classic the design is, dates all the way back to some of the originals. So really cool, really excited to put this one through the gauntlet and see how it stacks up. So stay tuned, that's coming right up. Alright guys, so let's get this review of the Thunderbolt started. So this is the TDR-5S variant. There are a whole host of Thunderbolt variants out there. This is the 5S. The other real common one in the Succession Wars era is the 5SE. But again, this is just the plain old 5S. So this is a quintessential heavy mech, 65 tons, battle value of 1335, so it's right in there. It's not cheap, but it's not expensive. It's kind of what you would expect for sort of a staple heavy mech. It is, in terms of lore, one of the original heavy planetary assault mechs that was designed. I believe the original prototype debuted in like the 2400s. This particular variant followed shortly after in 2505 in like that Age of War type time frame, and really persisted all the way through the Renaissance clan invasion. Obviously the mech was refitted with better technology, the rediscovered stuff, but really a staple design. So back to the stats of this. Movement, it's a 4.6. It does not have any jump capabilities. So some of the Thunderbolts, like the aforementioned 5SE, does have jump jets, I believe, but this one does not. 15 heat sinks on the chassis, which is pretty solid. And the real telling piece here, though, is the armor. It's absolutely slathered. 208 points, 13 tons of armor on this mech that rivals like the Grasshopper, which is notorious for survivability. 98.6% total coverage. And if you look at the diagram in the middle there, you can see there's basically no gaps. I mean, it is well armored and well distributed. It does have all of its actuators, hands on both sides, and a whole array of weapons. Now, first and foremost, it's got that shoulder-mounted LRM-15 that's on the right torso. It has 2 tons of armor feeding that LRM launcher in the CT. The large laser on the right arm, that's sort of its staple, repeatable weapon there. It has a trio of medium lasers in the left torso. It has an SRM-2 rack in the right torso. That's fed by a ton of ammo, also in the right torso. And then it has a pair of machine guns on the left arm, and that has that very volatile 1 ton of, of machine gun ammo. So on the weapon side, this has one LRM-15. It's shoulder mounted in the right torso. That's fed by 2 tons of ammunition, all of that housed in the CT. It has that staple large laser in the right arm, a trio of medium lasers in the left torso, an SRM-2 rack on the opposite torso, on the right torso there. That's fed by 1 ton of ammo. And then it has a pair of machine guns in the left arm, and those are backed up by a very volatile ton of, it's 200 rounds or 400 damage if it gets popped, of MG ammo. So always terrifies me when I see the 200 rounds sitting somewhere on my critical hit sheet there, but it is what it is. So overall, again, a very great spread of weapons and a really nice distribution of armor on this mech. Okay, so on the offensive benchmarking side, the top left, what we're looking at is our baseline ACD versus our redline ACD. So baseline is very solid. As expected, it climbs as we move through the turns and we get closer and closer and close that range. The redline heat, so beyond that sort of 10-inch mark, or really beyond that 9-inch mark, I should say, the mech is under phenomenal heat control because it only has the large laser and that LRM-15 in play. However, as soon as you are able to get within 9 inches, you have 3 medium lasers and an SRM-2 now that you can bring into the fray. So your heat can climb very quickly at that point, and that's really where we have our opportunities to push the mech for a little bit more damage over baseline. So when we look at that optimization, you can see that, at the sort of 6-inch mark, 5-inch mark, and then again at point blank, we're opening up a little bit more, firing a few more weapons. That LRM-15, even when you get within minimum range, just a staple weapon. It does a ton of damage. It has almost, 16 rounds of ammo. So unless you're playing a very long game of BattleTech, you're going to get to use that almost every turn. But otherwise, bringing those medium lasers into rotation with that SRM-2, you can do quite a bit of damage with this mech. So the numbers look like this. Baseline 129.0. We were able to optimize that up by almost a little more than full 10 points to 139.5. Our red line ACD was 89.2, but the real telling thing was the heat calc, and that was at 142. So that means if we fired as much as we can without shutting down, we can build up 142 points of heat over 12 turns. It's substantial. It's not unnoticeable. It's definitely a thing you got to keep an eye on when those medium lasers and that SRM-2 get into play with that large laser and LRM-15. So let's talk about the lethality index. So hopefully by now you guys are familiar with this. Just to recap, you're shooting at a Javelin 10F. 10,000 games are played. It's all simulated. And basically, these are by the numbers, right? How many times can you kill this mech? So what we can see here is we've got 68.8% total kills. That's pretty respectable. Damage per hit was 4.91, and you can see the head kills, a segment of that donut chart, only 7.5%. This mech really doesn't have like big damage weapons. Almost everything is doing 5 damage. And then on top of that, you've got a couple of SRMs, a couple of machine guns. So, you don't have a lot of big damage hits. It is the kind of mech that will wear you down very quickly. And if you have an enemy target that's damaged in 3 or 4 different sections, you can generate some critical hits. As we can see here, we got 5.25, which is a respectable number. But, again, it doesn't have that stopping power that like something with, PPCs or AC-10s or AC-20s is going to have. But still, it can dish out damage, as we see by our damage benchmarks, also in the time to kill here. So our time to kill was 13.1, which again is not bad considering we're in the high 70s, the high 60s for the percent total kills. So overall, offensively, I would say this mech is pretty strong. Now, defensively, obviously, this mech, we talked about how much armor it has. I'm very much expecting this mech to blow the charts apart here. And it did really good, but I got to be honest, I really thought it was going to be a little bit tougher than this. But again, it's got so much onboard ammo, which we'll talk about in a minute. So first, let's look at the motive breakdown. So speed is 4.6. It can claim that +2 target mod at best. Which is good. Once you get down to +1 or obviously no target mod, the benefit is exponentially worse. But overall, motive hits were fairly low, 12%. I guess it's about average. And again, it's got tons. It's just maxed out on the legs. It's got those critical slots there, so it's pretty packed. But in terms of the survivability, this is where I really want to dig in and do some analysis. So just CT head kills were 7%. More than twice that number were ammunition kills. So 7% head kills, or CT or head kills, 18.1% of the deaths were ammo driven. So a total of 25.2%, it was destroyed. And to me, for a mech with 13 tons of armor, 208 points, I was honestly expecting it to survive just a little bit more than that. Still really solid numbers, but was a little surprised, to be honest. I think that a mech like the Black Knight, is about on par with this, and it has 2 tons less armor. Granted, it's got a little bit more on the internal structure side, but you can see kind of how much of an impact having all this ammo really is. And when we look at the ammo crit chance by location at the bottom, even worse than having like 100% in one location is having like 25% in 3 or 4 locations, because we all know how the hit location tables work, right? And having so many opportunities in different places to hit ammo is rough. If all your ammo is co-located, and you get penetration on that side, you can just dump it all. When it's all over the place, it's really hard to manage like that. So anyway, you can see it's basically, how does it break down here? So CT, 17% chance, 20% chance in the right torso, 14% chance in the left arm. There's a lot of ammo on this mech, and really that's its Achilles heel. And I think when Kevin loves the Thunderbolt, and when I think about whenever he plays this mech, he plays the 5SE, which has less ammo. I don't think it has the machine guns, and I know it doesn't have the SRM2. So it's much more survivable. It'd be interesting to kind of do a side by side of these. But again, the ammo here is really the Achilles heel. But even with that Achilles heel, this mech survives a whole hell of a lot. It's a really tough mech. So don't want to disparage it. It's still a really great performer here. Again, just kind of picking it apart to see where that weakness is, because again, it's almost 100% of armor across the board. Really hard mech to bring down, especially if the dice gods are not with you and you end up spreading damage all over. Good luck killing this guy. Okay, so on to our efficiency analysis here. So this is pretty interesting. Basically, what we're looking at here is our optimized ACD multiplied by this mech's survivability. And we're looking at that per turn. And so we get an effective ACD number. Now, if you remember, our baseline number was 129, our optimized number was 139.5, our effective number is 123.3. So just a little bit lower than baseline. Again, was hoping for a little bit more survivability out of this mech, but at the end of the day, 74.8%, really solid number. And when you look at that for the battle value, again, only 1335 for this mech is a bargain. And you can see that in the efficiency score. Again, that's basically a mathematical sort of formula that factors in your survivability, your damage output, and your battle value. It's all rolled into this number. And so our average is about a 5, right? That's kind of where the bell curve is. This really looks good. This is a 6.6, so this is a solid buy. Like, if I was going to put this, anywhere, it would be definitely put this thing in your lance if you're running a heavy lance. This is a really good competitive mech, and I would bet the 5SE probably could even do a little bit better. But the 6.6, again, very solid. So let's look at gunnery score sensitivity. That's on the right side of your screen here. So this mech was a 0.655. Now, most mechs you'll see are in the mid-5s and low 6s. This is right about there. So average sensitivity. And what sensitivity tells us is how well it responds to improved gunnery. From a 4 to a 3 to a 2 to a 1 to a 0. I know a lot of you guys don't play gunnery 0. I don't either. We typically play on average about a 2. Although some of our campaigns will probably be more gravitating towards a 3, but I digress. The point of this is, if you're going to play this mech, you'll get good mileage out of it in that 3 to 2 range. I would not do a gunnery 4 mech. I mean, I wouldn't put a rookie pilot in this mech, even though it does have a lot of short-range firepower. It also has very strong long-range firepower, and for probably, 1/3 to half of the game, you're going to be relying on the LRM-15, the large laser, unless you're just bum rushing to get those short-range weapons into play, which, I guess if you're doing that, you could run a green pilot, but I think that there's definitely return on investment for upgrading this guy to a veteran or even an elite pilot in that regard. Okay, so lastly, we're going to look at our role analysis. So just some key metrics. We're going to rehash some of the key ones we pulled out from the Battlytics engine thus far. So again, our optimized ACD, again, that's average calculated damage. That's the damage you are likely to do over that 12-turn simulation. That's 139.5. Damage per hit, 4.91. So again, not very strong. It's got a lot of medium lasers, SRM, LRM-15, so not big damage guns, but still 4.91, not terrible. Has an incredibly good survival rate at 74.8%. Movement, mediocre, 4.6, no jumping. Redline heat, again, a little toasty in this mech, not uncontrollable, but not cool either, so it's kind of in the middle there, 142 on the redline heat. And then the efficiency was very good at 6.6. And then the gunnery sensitivity at 0.655. So How'd our report card look? Well, offensively, this guy got a 3.5 out of 5, so not bad. Again, you know, it's not a stone cold killer. It can dish out damage, but really this mech is all about the toughness. And so when we look at the defensive score, 4 out of 5, that's really good. You know, that's up there with some bigger mechs. Again, you know, we talked about the Grasshopper earlier, but you know, even if you get in those 75, 80 and above, some of those mechs are in the 4s as well. So this mech, very tough, can hang with the best. Mobility 2.0, not much to really say there. On the control side, so that's how well this thing can handle heat. So this is a 3. So if you're a new player, you don't really understand the nuances of when to shoot, when to not shoot, this mech will get you through the game okay. I think there's enough weapons that you can cycle things in and out. You can dissipate heat very quickly. Again, it's got 15 heat sinks, so even if you just blast them with, you know, a couple of medium lasers or 3 medium lasers and the SRM2, you can still bleed heat off, which is really good. Efficiency score, again, we talked about this, 6.6. So this came out of the 3.5. This is definitely to the right of the bell curve. You know, it's getting into that better territory. You know, 7, 8, that's really like where you start getting like exceptional buys, but a 6.6 is really, I think, an excellent, you know, bang for buck return on investment there for the battle value. So before we dive into roles, let's look at our threat assessment here. So what is this? So the yellow line really represents your ratio of what damage you could do maximally, right, if everything hit and you did full damage at a given range, right, versus what you're likely to do. So this is where our average calculations come in with your gator and, you know, so on and so forth. And then the yellow line is, again, a ratio of that, those two things to heat, right? How much heat do you have to spend, you know, to get all these weapons in place? So for example, you can see at 9 inches, that yellow line drops. Why? Well, you're bringing in 4 new weapons, 3 medium lasers and an SRM2. You're building up a ton of heat from where you were at 10 inches. And, you know, again, is that damage trade-off there? It's not, because you're at long range. You're at a +4 modifier for all of those weapons. So, you know, again, just to kind of explain at a high level what we're looking at here. So what does it tell us? Well, what it tells us is that the sweet spot for this mech in terms of heat efficiency really is, you know, that, or damage to heat efficiency, I should say, is really in that 14 to 10 inch, right? That's where your LRM's at medium range, your large laser can be at either long or medium, and you're not building up any heat because you have enough heat sinks to really dissipate everything. But then within 6 inches, you can see that damage picks back up again. Your alpha strike potential goes through the roof at 9 inches as well. And so, you know, definitely when I think about where I want to play this mech in conjunction with this graph, I think it is definitely a mid to short range mech. You know, use that LRM-15 to cover the close, but really you want this mech up close and personal, doing some damage. So regardless, let's talk about the threat envelope real quick. So this mech doesn't have any rear mounted weapons. You can see it's got that little stub on the rear left. That's from the left arm machine guns. But otherwise, it's mostly front arc stuff. You got a little bit of, you got that large laser on the right arm, so you got a pretty good sweeping arc of fire on the right side. You know, you can twist and shoot, you get hit behind you, but at the end of the day, this is sort of a forward-facing mech. Doesn't have a whole lot on those arms. So, baking all this together, what do we think for combat roles? Well, first and foremost, frontline, right? We kind of talked about this. This is a mech that, you know, you're going to take, you're going to close the gap, you're going to get into midfield, you're going to be able to pick up incoming brawlers, you're tough as nails, you're going to survive, right? So this mech really thrives in that type of role. Conversely, I think it could also be a cavalry mech. Now, it's not very fast, but 6 also isn't terribly slow either. I mean, you can close pretty good distance, turn over turn, especially if you've got that LRM-15 and the large laser, to do a little bit of damage while you close. Unless they're kiting you across the board, you're going to be able to get into range. And when you do, you know, as we looked at in the threat assessment and some of our damage analyses, this thing can really deal out some punishment, right? It brings a lot of firepower to the table, and it has a devastating alpha strike. So, you know, getting this mech across the board quickly is probably going to be a little challenging, but don't be afraid to use it that way, because this mech can draw fire and you can get up close. You can really just, you know, punch somebody hard with this mech. Get those machine guns into play. It's free damage. And if you're using sort of the rapid fire rules well, you got to build up some heat there. But they can also be pretty terrifying when you have 2 rapid-fire machine guns if you roll really well. So cavalry, again, I sort of hesitate when I say that because it is so slow. Usually that roll is reserved for like 5/8 or better, but I think this mech could play that role again based on what I just said. So lastly, defender role. We talked about the toughness of this mech. I think it's sort of its hallmark. It's got the weapons to dig in, take a position, hold it down. It has the LRM-15 and the large laser, which, I mean, again, you can do a lot of damage with those 2 things. 23 points of damage on the Alpha Strike if everything lands, I believe, if my math is serving me correctly. And again, if enemies close into you, I mean, they've got a lot of firepower to face down in that front arc. There's 3 mediums at SRM-2. There's a lot of potential there. So that's where I would play this mech. I think overall, though, this mech is very versatile. It could probably fill a variety of different roles. You could take that cavalry pip and move it to skirmisher. I sort of considered that. But again, I think getting that mech in close is really where you're going to get your money back on this battle value. So that is the Thunderbolt. Guys, appreciate your time. Always love your comments. Let me know what you think. How do you use the Thunderbolt? And if you haven't, for shame, get one, put it on your table, paint it up. The new model is awesome. Pre-order the next batch of Game of Armored Combat if you haven't gotten one of those new models. They are so cool. But anyway, thanks again, guys. Stay tuned. We're going to have more mech reviews, more campaign battle reports, all sorts of great stuff coming your way. So thanks again from all of us here at Death from Above Wargaming.